Hi, welcome to the virtual college fair. For this session, we have the Evergreen State College, who will be providing information and answer any questions that you may have as well. So thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions. This presentation is also being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website where you registered. And now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
Cool. Yeah, my name's Arlo. I use he, him pronouns. I go to the Evergreen State College. I'm a student ambassador. And I'm just going to be presenting a few photos of campus to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. So I'll share my screen here. So this is just kind of an overview. This picture is taken above Red Square, which is kind of our central hub on campus. You can see a picture of the clock tower, the college activities building, and the library. Yeah, so just a few facts about Evergreen. So we were founded in 1967, but I believe classes start in 71, so we're actually coming up on our 50-year anniversary. We are one of 6 public institutions in Washington. We have about 1,000 acres of land. 1/5 of that is developed campus, so we have a very, very large portion of forest, including beach access, and of course we offer a baccalaureate and master's programs. So Seminar 2 is a pretty unique space. It's pretty central to the Evergreen model. We'll get into what Seminar exactly is later, but basically this space was designed specifically for seminaring. So it's a non-hierarchical structure. Classes are generally going to be organized in a circle so that you can talk to your peers. And it's a very environmentally friendly building. It's split up into 5 different sections to attract more natural light. And of course, all the water drains off into storage facilities where it can be used to water our gardens. Performing arts is also pretty significant at Evergreen. So we have 2 spaces for performing arts. We have the Media Lab, which is downstairs in the library building, and we have the communications building. So the communications building is going to be home to more performing arts. You know, there are going to be 2 theaters there, both a main stage and a black box. There's also a film showing room, 2D and 3D animation studios, instruments for loan. There's also piano rooms you can go in, dance studios. It's a very, very big and complex building. Downstairs in the library, we have our media lab, and this is definitely going to be more media focused, obviously. So it's going to be audio engineering, photography, filmmaking, image editing. It's home to Photoland, which is our photo editing and photo development studio. It has black rooms, or dark rooms, and cameras, digital and analog. And this entire space, both spaces actually, operate on a system called Proficiency, which is unique to Evergreen and something we're really proud of. So Proficiency basically allows you, no matter what you're studying, to use any piece of the equipment that is offered in either of these spaces. So on campus, we have roughly 6,000 pieces of equipment, whether that's going to be a camera or a boom mic or a recorder or reflector boards, 3D printers, anything you could imagine is totally free to students. As soon as you get Proficiency, which is effectively being taught how to use it, being certified by someone who does know, you have that for your entire time at Evergreen, and you can use it for any project you like. There's a lot of independent work at Evergreen. So the ability to incorporate multiple forms of media into your projects is something that's really important here. 2D and 3D art. Our arts annex is going to be home to most of our visual art on campus, at least still visual art. So we have our clay studio, woodworking, fine metals. These spaces also work on Proficiency, as well as our 2D art studios upstairs in the arts annex. The walls and ceilings are made of glass, so more natural light comes in, and then the light will actually be reflected off reflecting boards, so it's super evenly distributed around the building. We've actually won awards on that building because it's very high quality. We'll have live models come in for students to work on. The classrooms in there are completely malleable. So that means all the all the walls, all the desks and all the chairs are completely movable. Once you get into a space, you can move it however you like, and that'll be your space for the quarter. So a single class gets a single space. And the organic farm, I think, is the last space I'll talk about here. This is about a 20-minute walk off campus, or off central campus, still on Evergreen's campus, of course. And it's a 5-acre organic farm run by students. The primary program that operates on the farm is Practice of Organic Farming. That's a 3-quarter program that runs spring, summer, and fall. It's 16 credits. And it's everything to do with farming, whether you're studying soil science or agrobusiness, or actually growing plants and selling them. The Practice of Organic Farming will cover it all. It's a very comprehensive program, and it actually sells its food to students on campus at 50% off during the fall quarter, as well as to the Greenery, which is our on-campus cafeteria, and a few other local restaurants and stores. The organic farm also has a few other programs. There's going to be kind of the science side, which will be kind of like designing permaculture systems, or perhaps an agribusiness side. There's a food grade and a medical grade lab on the farm, so you can do a lot of work there. And finally, if you're not interested in studying agriculture formally, but you are interested in having a garden space while you live on campus, or off campus for that matter, you can loan out a 5x5 plot of land, which will be yours. You can plant anything you like. The farm workers will help you manage it. Yeah, it's yours for as long as you want it, totally free. And I think with that, I'll hand it off to Carl to talk a little bit about the Evergreen structure.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Carl Forbes, and I'm the Associate Director of Admission. I work with students who are applying. And what you got a chance to hear just a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago, were some of the really interesting and unique spaces on campus, but there's more that makes Evergreen unique. So I'm going to focus on some of those big overarching things that make Evergreen unique. The first one is that you do not declare a major at Evergreen. That means that you get to study whatever it is that you want at Evergreen. There is no checklist of courses that you have to accomplish in order to graduate. So you are free to choose the things that you want to take, the things that you're intellectually curious about and that you want to learn more about as part of your professional development. So that is a really unique idea. There are some places that say that you design your own program, but you still have to take certain courses and things like that, but at Evergreen you don't. So you choose your path. You decide whether you want to take science and go the science route. You can create yourself a Bachelor of Science degree, or if you decide that you don't want to take the math and science, but you want to study other subjects, you can go through and you can create a Bachelor of Arts degree. And then we do have those students who, and I don't know exactly why they do it, but there are students that decide that they want to get a Bachelor of Arts and Science. And so that's possible too. You just take a little bit more, you take a few more courses, and then you're able to get a Bachelor of Arts and Science. But honestly, I just cannot think of a best use case scenario for why a student would go through and do that, other than they just like to learn. We have a very simple schedule at Evergreen. And what I mean by that is that when you sign up for a course at Evergreen, what you're signing up for is a multi-subject interdisciplinary program. So at Evergreen, we don't call our courses courses like you would. We call our courses programs. So if you were to ask a student like Arlo, hey, Arlo, what program are you in? Arlo won't tell you about his overarching theme or what some people would call a major. He'll tell you probably what he's studying this quarter and the kinds of things that he's doing this quarter. But to give you an idea of what that means, if you look at the illustration in front of you, at a conventional college, traditional college, you're going to take 4 or 5 different and separate courses. And then it's up to you to figure out how those courses work together in the real world. But at Evergreen, what we do is we put all of those different subjects into one large full-time program that you'll study. Now that full-time program is not going to meet for all of its hours on one day. It'll be spread out throughout the entire week. And when you're in class, because of the fact that there are different students, different types of learners in the class, there are different modes of instruction. So for example, I'm an auditory learner. I learn best by lecture. And I know not everybody is like that. Some students like to do things more hands-on. Some students like to read more. Some students like more group work. So because of the fact that different students learn different ways, there's different modes of delivery. So what you see in front of you are the different modes of delivery. Most of our programs do include some type of field trip or some type of workshop where you're creating something or some type of group learning experience. Pretty much all of our courses do seminar. Seminar is when, and this is what Arlo was talking about a little while ago. Seminar is where you do the reading, you bring out some ideas that you want to chat about in class, and then you take over. You lead the discussion. You talk about the things that you picked up out of the reading. And there are some people, that's how they learn. They read and they synthesize that information, and then they seminar with other people. And then, of course, there is traditional lecture too. So you're going to see a variety of different ways of learning in this one class that you're taking that's spread out across the entire week. The idea is that when you're in your first year, we hope that you're exploring, that you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to do. So you're going to try different things, try different courseworks, see what subjects are out there and see what speaks to you. What is your passion? Where is your curiosity? Because we want to start to satisfy that curiosity. Then in your, as you move on to your sophomore, junior, and senior years, then you're going to focus a lot more. And for most students, that's exactly what they're going to do. They have an idea what they want to study, or they have an idea of a few things that they're curious about. And then as they take more courses, they refine that idea to what it is that they want to do. And by the time that they're in the junior year, then they can really start focusing on how do they distinguish themselves from the other candidates who might be looking at grad school or who might be looking at a job after graduation. And then by the senior year, you're looking at applying what you've learned. What kind of experience can you have that's going to show what you've learned, but also add, solidify those skills that you've developed and add to those. And so there's different ways that we have on campus that you can apply your learning. As I mentioned, in that third year, you start looking at how you emphasize what it is that you've learned. If you've had that focus, you can go through and take a look back at the coursework that you've taken and see what are those common threads. So for example, in this illustration in front of you, you'll see that in each of the programs, the first year programs, second year programs, third year programs, fourth year programs, this student took a variety of courses with a variety of subjects, but one thing that was a theme throughout all of them was visual art. So when this student graduates, this student is going to have an emphasis in the visual arts. They'll have earned at least 45 credits. Most students have at least one emphasis. Many students have 2 or even 3. When we talked about the different types of things that happen in your program, we also have separate courses. So for students who are thinking about going to med school and thinking, okay, how does this whole structure that I've never seen before, how does this work if I want to go to med school? And so what we do for the students who want to go to med school is very, excuse the pun, but they're very prescriptive. They know exactly what courses they want you to take in order to be prepared for med school. So for medical school students who are planning on going to med school, we actually have the individual courses that you want to take in order to get to med school. And then we have other individual courses, things like if you wanted to make sure that you took a course in chemistry, or if you wanted to make sure that you took a course in psychology. We have individual courses, but the majority of our courses are those large programs, those 12 or 16 credit programs. We also have individual learning contracts, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. And of course, like most other colleges in the country, we have internships. So for our individual learning contracts, that's something that we proliferate at Evergreen. Remember that our goal is that you're going to take the programs that you want to learn about, that you're curious about. But let's say you really want to learn about the sun. I don't know. I'm just pulling that out of the atmosphere, like where the sun is. I'm just pulling that out. But let's say you really wanted to study solar activity and stuff like that. Well, we don't have a program or individual course on solar activity. Or at least I don't think we do. So if you want to do that, you get to go through and work with a faculty member, team up with that faculty member, and really focus in and say, these are the things that I want to learn. The 2 of you or 3 of you will go through and identify learning objectives for that particular course of study, and then you go through and you do your research, you do the study, and you work with your professor on completing those learning objectives, and then you get the credit for it. So you can actually design your own course. And we have lots of studies who design their own courses while they're at Evergreen. Like I said, we proliferate that. The other thing that we do that is, like I said, this is something a little bit more traditional, is internship. As you're looking at how do I apply what I've learned, how do I pick up the workplace skills that I need to show an employer or a graduate school that I'm ready for the next step, you can engage in internships. Most people have an internship or 2 before they graduate from Evergreen. Sometimes they are 4-credit internships, sometimes there are full-time internships. Lots of times you get paid for those internships, but it's real practical work where you're in the field, where you're seeing what the other people do who are professionals in the field, and you're learning from them as well as doing the tasks that they would do. These are most of the time individual studies, but sometimes we have them as groups. For example, we have a legislative internship, which is one of our most popular internships. We're located in Olympia, Washington, which is the capital of Washington, and we're just a few miles from the Capitol building. And we have lots of our students that go down and do internships with the individual legislators, as well as group projects with them. The next thing that makes us really unique is that we don't do letter grades. So I know right now you probably have fantastic GPAs, you have 4.0s and 5.3s. I don't know how you get a 5.3 out of a 4.0 scale, but people are really distinguishing themselves with their grades. And once they get to Evergreen, we stop doing grades. The reason for that, or the idea behind it, is that if you get an A in a course, that means you've met all the course objectives. But how well did you meet those course objectives? Which parts were you the strongest in? Which ones did you struggle with? You don't know if you get a letter grade, or if you get a B. How much more would it take, other than earning a few more points, to distinguish yourself with the A? Those are things that are difficult to figure out in a situation where you have grades. So what we do is we do narrative evaluations at Evergreen. And these narrative evaluations allow you the opportunity to get real feedback on your progress. What is it that you did? What did you learn? What did you do best? What are ways that you can improve and do better? And things like that. I'm going to turn it over to Arlo for a second. Arlo, you've had to do narrative evaluations before. What was it like sitting with a professor and hearing what you were like in class?
Yeah, it's a really cool experience. So at the end of the quarter, of course, before you actually meet your professor, they write an evaluation of you and you of them. So you actually have to write a self-evaluation first and send it in to them. So you're thinking about how you did, you're conveying your thoughts on how you thought you were successful during the quarter to your faculty, because honestly, doing well is a pretty relative scale. And so for one person doing fantastically, for another person maybe is like okay for the quarter. So having that self-evaluation is super, super important. You're also evaluating your faculty and holding them accountable to make sure they're providing high quality instruction. And then once you've done all that, you go into their office, you sit down for a meeting, it's usually 30 minutes or so, and they hand you your evaluation. It'll be written down, but they'll also kind of talk you through it. And what that provides is a little bit more instruction on how exactly you did well, what exactly you did poorly, where you could improve, what they were really impressed by, what they think your strengths are, what their impressions of you are. And it kind of synthesizes more than just your academic life. Of course, it's an objective measure of their impression of your ability in the classroom. But what the self-evaluation, what their evaluation of you captures is a more synthesized version of what life in the class is actually like, and a more synthesized version of the material they produced and how you interpreted it. It kind of includes more of who you are, what your personality is, and the result is that you actually know how you can improve. So the next time you go into a program, you know exactly where you struggled, and you know how to improve yourself. So you're not just receiving a grade, you're actually knowing how to improve. It also kind of acts as a letter of recommendation. By the time you're done at Evergreen, you'll have, roughly 12 letters of recommendation from each program you took, which you can then use at a grad school or a job. And again, these are objective measures of how well you did. These aren't like your friends, these are faculty, certified faculty at a college. So it's really high quality stuff.
Arlo, would you say that when you, as you sit down in these meetings, are you getting advisement? Are they talking about the next steps and what you should do next and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. The student-faculty relationship is really, really important. So at Evergreen, we have a student-faculty ratio of roughly 1 to 21. So you are always really close to your faculty. You're in one program the entire quarter, sometimes the entire year. So you have a really good opportunity to build that relationship. And frequently for me, actually, I've used my faculty as academic advisors. In my first quarter at Evergreen, I found a faculty who was doing exactly what I wanted to do. It was like a perfect match. I didn't even know it. And I showed up in the class and I was like, oh, that's the one. That's me in the future. And so I just sat down with him and said, hey, you know a lot about your field and you know a lot about how you got there. And you know a lot about how I learned and what I did well and what I need help with. What do I do next? And he made some fantastic recommendations, and I feel I am now on a very secure path at Evergreen. And while academic advisors have totally helped with that, the relationship with the faculty and that meeting specifically was really, really important for me.
Arlo, what path are you on, and what was that course that really launched you in that direction?
Yeah, so my first and second quarter at Evergreen, I took Introduction to Environmental Studies. That was an interdisciplinary program which studied environmental geology for kind of the earth sciences of what's actually happening to the planet, as well as sociology, geography, and demography as kind of the social side of what's causing climate change or any other environmental issue. And I really connected with the social sciences portion of that. There was a week where we talked about demography, which is, of course, the study of human demographics, how populations change, how population change affects areas, how population change affects people. And when we talked about that, it like clicked in my head. It was that is what I need to study. And so I sat down with Ted Whitesell, who is now retired. Unfortunately, I caught him in his last year. And I said, hey, I really want to do what you do. How do I get there? And he instructed me to explore, to start broad, because I was still in my first year. So actually in my third quarter, I took something totally different. I took a Latin American literature and history class, and it was fantastic. And now this year, I can come back into that social science emphasis with kind of a new view of what that means in a broader global context.
Did that course that you took in the third quarter, did that take you to another country?
It did not. It was, well, do you mean like physically or do you mean like academically?
Yeah, physically. Like, did it include study abroad?
It didn't, but that same professor does frequently do study abroad. So it was Carolina Ocampo. It was called Stories and Histories, El Cuento Latinoamericano. It was taught totally in Spanish, which was a lot of fun. And every other year, she usually alternates. She'll do that one year, and then the following year, she'll do Spanish Speaking World, which is a 3-quarter program, which is, again, I don't think it's taught all in Spanish, but it's taught, Spanish is a very large part of it. It studies, again, Latin American history, storytelling, literature. In the fall and winter, and then in the spring, it studies abroad. They have a spot in Mexico and a spot in Honduras that they'll go to. And that happens every other year. Of course, this coming year, the program's a little bit different. I think they're planning on starting in the winter, going into the spring, and then in the summer, if the global climate permits it, they can study abroad then.
Cool.
But yeah, those are all programs that are a very big part of El Camino, which is our Latinx American Studies. And it's a pretty robust program at Evergreen.
Very cool. So I wanted to give us an opportunity to talk about applying to Evergreen, so you get an idea of what exactly we're looking for and what you have to do. So at Evergreen, we have 2 applications that we use. One is our own in-house application that you can access by going to www.evergreen.edu, the /admissions, but the admissions is the 4th button, or the first button on your right, or the 4th button from the left, depending on which way that you like to look at the world. We also use the Common App, so you can go to the Common App website and then look for the Evergreen State College. We do have a $50 application fee, but because right now with the COVID-19 crisis around, we're waiving the application fee to try to provide some relief to families. You can apply using a traditional application, but you can also go test optional. So if you decide that you want to include scores, or if you've actually been able to take an SAT or ACT, we know that that's been a challenge for a lot of people, and you want to use that score, you can go through our traditional route. You have to complete your application. We require your official transcript from high school, and if you did any dual enrollment or college in the high school or running start or whatever they call it in your state, we are going to want to see those transcripts as well. 1, to see how you did, but also number 2, to see if we can assess you some credit toward your graduation. We will require your official scores, and then your essay is optional if you are looking at the traditional application. If you choose to go test optional, we're still going to need you to complete the application, and we are going to need your official transcripts just like before. But in this case, your personal statement or essay is going to be required since we're not going to have your test scores. And we also need you to email us. You can email your counselor, who will be in contact with you to introduce themselves, or you can email to admissions at evergreen.ec. Oh, goodness gracious, it's hard to get out. You can email admissions at evergreen.edu and just say that you want your application to be test optional, include your name and your birth date, and then we can make your application test optional. No, we've purposely gone through pretty quickly, and I know that we spoke really quickly along about this whole thing, so we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. The chat is disabled, however, we do have a Q&A. So if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A and then we will address them. The first question that we have in the Q&A is, do we know estimated out-of-state tuition cost? And the answer is yes. On this screen right here, tuition, fees, books, and supplies are about $27,225. So that is the just the tuition and fees. The room and board is about another $11,000. So the total cost for an out-of-state student will be somewhere around $40,000 to $42,000. That includes transportation and other things as well. So definitely less expensive than going to a private school in-state or going to a public school out-of-state. While I have the screen up, I will tell you that we have been recognized by several different magazines and rankings and things like that. So you can see those things here. Also, if you're in a Western state, the 11 states that are the westernmost of the United States, that includes Alaska and Hawaii, as far east as Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and I think as far as Texas. I think if you're in those states, then you might have heard of the Western Undergraduate Exchange, and we actually are members of the Western Undergraduate Exchange. And basically what that means is that the tuition is lower than it would be if you were from one of the states that are east of the states that I mentioned, if that's not too confusing. Other questions? Arlo, what did I miss? What did I not talk about?
Did you talk about study abroad at Evergreen?
Well, we kind of alluded on it a little bit, but I'm glad you brought it up. So a lot of people ask me, what is my favorite area on campus? And I have two. One is walking by the ceramics classroom, which is in the arts annex. So I love to see from the beginning to the end of the session how the work improves and stuff like that. But the second is a wall on the main floor of the library building, right in front of the elevators, and it's the international wall. So it has all of our international type of stuff that's on there. One of the things you can do is you can look on that wall and you can see what are the programs, the actual courses. Remember, we call our courses programs at Evergreen. What are the programs that take students abroad? Arlo told you about the Spanish-speaking world, one of them that takes students abroad, but there are several courses where that's part of the actual course. If you take that course, you're going to be going abroad at some point. And it tells you in what sessions. We're on the quarter system at Evergreen, so that means we have 4 quarters in the year. So it tells you which quarter of the year the trip is going to take place, where it goes, and if there are any additional costs to the student, so that you can put that in as part of your expected costs and actually get financial aid to do it. We also have consortiums so if you don't want to travel with one of those particular courses, but there's a place that you want to go that's out beyond that, you can go through and you can join one of the consortiums, and that can take you to the country that you want to visit. We do have a decent amount of financial aid and merit-based scholarships, depending on what state you're in. Like I said, if you're in one of the Western states, that's our best scholarship, which is roughly about a $16,000 scholarship per year. If you're east of the Western states, our highest scholarship is $12,000 per year. And then we also use the free application for federal student aid, or you might have heard of it as FAFSA. And then we'll go through and build a financial aid package around what your family need is and that kind of thing. Hopefully that answers that question. We do have a separate scholarship process that I didn't mention, so I will tell you that too. So we have an open scholarship competition that begins in November with a hard deadline date of February 1st. So it opens up in November. You can go through and take a look and see we have over 150 different scholarships that are offered by different alumni or different organizations and things like that. And they will go through and be very specific. We want you to write a letter or an essay about your experience or your contribution to society or things like that. And you can go through, fill out the application for the scholarship, write that essay, and then you're in this open competition scholarship with current students and with other students like yourselves that want to come to Evergreen. And those scholarships can range anywhere from $300 to $6,000. So between the scholarship competition, between scholarships that we have based on your grades, and you have to have at least a 3.0 to get a scholarship. 3.5 gets you the highest scholarship that we have. Whether that be the Western Undergraduate Exchange or what we call the Student Achievement Award, depending on what state you're in. So between those regular financial aid and Pell Grants and things like that, we can be very competitive in the financial aid picture. Other questions that you guys have? All right, what else did we miss, Arlo? Well, you know, what's your favorite spot on campus?
About my favorite spots on campus, say that again? I think my favorite spot on campus is the library. I spend, when it's open, almost all my time studying in the library. It's a beautiful space, so stained glass windows, very, very large windows, so a bunch of natural light comes in. It's kind of quiet, but it's not a silent library, so you can chat, you just have to be respectful. And it's kind of like a communal gathering study space. So in kind of this one corner in the library, there aren't as many bookshelves, and it's opened up to students. And there are tables kind of all over the place, and it's very frequent that if you go, just sit down at one of those tables, you'll see someone you know pop in, and you can kind of study with them just to have a little extra motivation. You know, if you have someone sitting across from you, it's harder to pop onto your phone real quick. So yeah, definitely upstairs in the library is my favorite spot on campus. I do want to give a mention to the woods though, because we do have 750 acres of woods on campus. That includes about 3/4 of a mile of beachfront access. And especially last spring during the pandemic, I was really, really, really grateful to have that on campus. Because if I was stuck in a city, you know, like UW in Seattle, what are you going to do? Whereas at Evergreen, it was really, really nice to have that green space. Totally like it's mine, you know, as a student on campus, I really feel like that green space is mine. And that's a really important thing to have. There's so many trails you get lost forever. And so that was very comforting in the spring, during our primary lockdown.
Cool. Next question that we have in the chat is, by applying this year for Evergreen, even if something happens and I'm unable to attend, would that disqualify me for residency after I have lived in Washington for a year? That does make sense as a question. So if you are trying to establish residency, you have to establish residency where it does not look like education is the primary reason that you are moving to Washington. And you have to live in Washington for 366 days before class starts. So if you register for Evergreen, but then because, you know, COVID or other things, you couldn't start this fall, you can defer. And you can defer for a year. If you earn scholarships, those scholarships will travel with you into the next year. You have to start in the fall if you're using a scholarship. So it's either this fall or the next fall, but you have to start in the fall. You can't start in the spring or in the winter. As long as you have lived in Washington for 366 days, then you will establish residency, and then you can go ahead and get the lower tuition, which is tuition by itself with tuition with fees and things like that for a resident is $9,252. Currently, there are lots of online courses. Most of our courses are online. There are only a few courses that are hybrid meaning partly in class and partly online. So there are lots of student courses online. Arlo, your course this year is online, right?
Yeah, so almost, unless you're taking practices of organic farming because they're essential workers, or you're in a like upper division STEM science class, you're going to be online. So all my social sciences, arts, you know, audio engineering, anything that doesn't really require being on campus will be online. And what that kind of looks like, it's different, obviously, because Evergreen was set up with this really tight-knit learning community in mind. And online, it's a different dynamic to try and develop that, but we totally have maintained it. In the spring, because I haven't started yet in the fall, so I don't know what it's going to be like, but in the spring, as my example, I was in a class, I was in that Stories and Histories class. It was 14 of us in one faculty, and we maintained the same synchronous class hours. So I know a lot of places cut tons of synchronous hours, so it was just a ton of homework and looking for online lectures. We maintain synchronous class, so we did have discussions. We had 2 seminars a week. We utilized tools that we didn't formerly have because of being in person, so small breakout rooms in Zoom was actually a really unique learning experience. We could kind of hop between rooms to talk with different people about material that we covered. We used Google Docs to try and do kind of group sessions while in class. We did volunteer work with organizations in the Olympia area. I know some of us worked with Upward Bound, which helps high school students going to college as a first-generation college student. There are some people who worked with Chile Woke, which does brings art in from Chile to talk about Chilean experiences. There are some people who did individual projects, which is very big at Evergreen, even if you're in a 16-credit program. And the result was that despite being online and actually never seeing any of my classmates' faces in person, I still made contacts and have friends in my phone who I still talk to today from that class, which is something that I found really important because a very universal trend that I've known among all college students everywhere that I know is a struggle to find motivation during quarantine. It's just simply hard to do stuff when you're in your house the whole time. But being able to do it with people, having those synchronous hours, working on projects together, really, for me, was incredibly valuable.
Cool. The next question in the chat is, are there any cultural and linguistic studies classes or programs, specifically East Asian? Or would I have to go through the individual learning contract that was mentioned earlier? The answer is both. We do have the courses, but then if you wanted to really refine that study, you can go through and create yourself an individual learning contract. I know that there are 2 programs. I know of 2 programs specifically that focus on Eastern Asian culture and take you there as part of the trip. One of them is the Silk Roads. That's the name of that particular program. The other one focuses, I believe, on a culinary history of Asian cooking, I think. And you learn language, you learn culture, and then you learn food, and then you travel there and you go through and study that. Those are 2 that I know that just because I like food, and when I stand in front of that international wall, I get to follow and take a look and see what those programs are. So those are 2 that I know of off the top of my head. Arlo, do you know of any that deal more specifically with Asian culture?
I know of one program that was offered last year, fall and winter, that dealt with South Asian culture. That was did a study abroad to Nepal. Actually, I think it was called Climate Justice in South Asia. So it kind of studied the socioeconomic issues of climate justice in South Asia, specifically Nepal, and then they actually went there. I also want to give a shout out to some of our sister schools in East Asia. I know we have 2 sister schools in China, and I think we have 1 in Korea. What a sister school is that you can do a direct exchange there. So they have programs offered, so you can literally just hop over and start taking classes there. And the credit will go towards your Evergreen degree. I think we have a few other schools. I know we have one in Denmark. We had some exchange students come last fall from our Danish sister school. And then obviously there are the 2 in China, and I believe 1 in Korea. And of course ILCs. If you really want to refine something specific, that's a fantastic resource to be able to really dig in.
All right, the session is over at 45 minutes past the hour, because it might not be 9 where you are, and we're at 44 minutes past the hour. So we're probably going to have a facilitator pop in a minute or so to close us off. So I just wanted to say thank you for stopping in, and thank you for the really, really challenging questions. It's always great when we get questions from people who are really interested and they're really thoughtful, rather than just how's the food in the cafeteria. So thank you for the really thoughtful questions. And we're done.
Yes, again, thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to the representatives from the Evergreen State College. We appreciate the information. I just want to also inform you that when you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback that you can provide. And also, this was just one of the many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions. And in about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recordings, as well as all the other sessions you've attended. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.